Welcome to this presentation where we speak about application reliability services from QualityKiosk. We're all used to examples of unreliability in production applications, especially enterprise ones. We're all used to screens like this where things don't behave the way that we expect them to, leaving us frustrated and leaving businesses frustrated as well, given the fact that many of these things directly impact their top line. QualityKiosk has been in the business of remedying reliability problems for the last 23 years, and it's done so for a variety of customers out there. QualityKiosk has got accolades and recognition from a variety of sources, from its peers, from industry bodies, and also from leading researchers. Now, why do you have to partner with QualityKiosk when it comes to application reliability? Number one, QualityKiosk is the only quality and reliability focused SI in the market to have experience on both sides of the software development life cycle, the pre and the post-production side. It's the only provider that has more than 3,500 skilled people who encompass all the aspects of the SDLC from architecture, design, testing, and observability with specific focus on the financial services space. And the technology alliances that QualityKiosk brings on board are with the best of breed of all leading OEMs across the SDLC, as well as investment specific to the SRE platform in software companies which are focused on solving SRE problems. QualityKiosk comes on board not just with people, but also some of its custom accelerators, its own IP, specifically the COMPAS service accelerator, which helps codify part of our 23 years of FSI domain knowledge, as well as bring velocity and reliability into your agile development process. Now, the first thing to understand about any reliability initiative is that it's not a one-step shop, right? It's a journey. And what we'll try and tell you is about a similar journey that one of the world's largest banks in the region, which QualityKiosk was involved with, how they managed to take themselves through a reliability journey. They started their journey in 2018, sowing the seeds of SRE, looking specifically into testing and reliability through chaos engineering. They went ahead and chose 3 critical applications and established an SRE department for those 3 critical applications. These started with chaos engineering, which we'll go into in detail in this presentation, and created their own product for telemetry and hotspot detection, the success of which led to further investment in the SRE space, where 100 business critical applications was brought on board, and various products like error budget tracking and auto remediation scripts and so on was built by the bank. The bank simultaneously in 2020 went ahead and upskilled a very large number of their production engineers, production and pre-production engineers, inculcating a culture of SRE throughout the bank. That, of course, the success of that program led to more applications getting onboarded. They started their own SRE practitioner program and so on. And by the end of the 5th year, they were in a situation where from the time they started, they managed to reduce the number of critical incidents in the apps in question from anywhere between 30 and 80%, right? So essentially, the where they started from was dispelling the perception that availability was the same as reliability, right? There are many practical problems that an organization has to confront, like an unwillingness to change. A lot of people feel threatened by a lot of these moves and so on and so forth, right? So the general concept out here, whatever we talk in this presentation, should be taken as a step-by-step, a journey, and not a big bang approach. Usually an approach where you start with a single journey and then you start with logical facets of SRE that are relevant to that journey, and then move on to other applications and other journeys. Something that's critical to make a program like this succeed is C-level support, right? And it's a constant process of learning and workshops and cultural penetration within the company that makes programs like this a success. Whoever starts off with an SRE initiative, ideally, the end goal of any digital program or transformation program like this is to get to 2 things. One is a very large number of transactions that happen without errors, a measurable number of transactions that happen without errors, and a measurable number of transactions that happen within a certain period of time. That's pretty much it, right? Now, to do that, there are some practical challenges that happen in order to get to that stage, right? And what we'll spend our time doing in this little session that we have is talking about these various challenges. There are design challenges, there are testing, there are challenges to do with the testing side of things. There are things that one needs to consider when it comes to the release strategy, the observability strategy, and so on. Now, at this point, if the customer is new to SRE, we spend a few minutes talking about what SRE actually means and why the discipline is actually important. The fact that developers spend a very large amount of time in doing non-development work, which leads to a huge amount of financial impact to enterprises across the world. And we also start by telling them about the concept of technical debt and how exactly the technical debt problem prevents them from achieving these goals that they have set out for themselves. A further thing that can be done for customers who are absolutely new to SRE is to explain how this technical debt problem manifests itself in their life cycle. For example, there is a lack of transparency between a business requirement and the developers. There is a lack of consistency of targets for a developer who's bothered about functionality and operations who cares about availability, right? You have a situation where performance is a KPI of many testing teams, but they just can't do it because of the sheer amount of regression tests that are not automated. The businesses put pressure on the lifecycle for more releases, and people take shortcuts, right? And then there are many release teams who are not KPI'd on reliability at all. Now, what happens at the end of all this is the fact that everybody reports meeting their SLAs, but at the end of it, when something does break in production, you have dissatisfied customers who are complaining about the organization, and the business is confused as to why this is happening despite having so many tools across the space, right? And that's basically what we will talk about to this kind of customer, where we speak that COMPAS as a platform helps address all these various parts and all these various inefficiencies in the SDLC. When it comes to a customer with an existing SRE initiative, or those who are already aware of what they roughly want to do, we speak about the same message, except for the fact that we speak about QualityKiosk being a partner of Watermelon Software, which QualityKiosk is an investor in, who helps solve this entire problem through a platform-based approach. Which brings us to the first aspect of SRE, the challenges that people face, right? The first aspect of SRE in any large enterprise is one of observability, right? Because if we say that we have to make something reliable, we have to have a credible mechanism of measuring what reliability is, right? So we need a cross-platform journey visibility and the ability to measure customer experience as service level objectives in our operations. Now, the COMPAS platform from QualityKiosk enables you to do that, as well as we are able, using our partnership with Watermelon, to actually go ahead and leverage your existing observability investments to track SLOs and not just do RCA with them. So which means that, let's say you have a Dynatrace or a Datadog or a AppDynamics in production, you're not just going to use them to find out what the root cause of a problem was, but you'll also be able to track what the end objective of the business is when it comes to that transaction. So if the business has said that I want no less than 2% of all my payment journeys to fail, right, or no more than 2% of my payment journeys to fail, you're able to actually measure that from your existing APM tools, right? This is not a functionality that your normal APM solutions give you. So QualityKiosk comes with its skill to do that over and above your APM investments, right? This is very closely related to what incident response challenges that people have in an SRE initiative, right? Most places are reactive in nature and cannot understand failure scenarios when it comes to incident response, right? A lot of recovery is actually manual, and there's a lot of toil involved. Very often that toil is also linked to a key person who knows how to do certain things, right? Now here is where you have situations where QualityKiosk comes up with the use of its platform. It tracks service health in pre-production, right? So a pre-production person is able to see the production service health of what their code is actually doing, right? Now this visibility gives people the ability to prioritize and to say that what exactly should I do in my design cycles, right? So they now have real-time visibility into what incidents are raised, how much of the error budget is consumed, right? So designers then can proactively solve incidents rather than waiting for a ticket to come up, right? Because the designer is now not just looking at, rough statistics on a weekly basis, but has a real-time view into what the probable cause of a journey is, which they are designing. So for example, if they're designing bill payment, they can see that this is a problem that's happening in bill payment, and they can start proactively impacting the error budget by resolving those problems at the code level. A second or a third aspect of a challenge that arises in the SRE journey is that of release strategies. Very often release strategies are tied to a calendar, right? What we need is a release based on business SLO targets. Like we were talking about the situation where people who are releasing have no KPIs to do with reliability. Their KPI is to release. They become a conduit in the entire SDLC. What we need is a situation where we say that, hey, the business has said that no more than 2% of payment journeys should fail. I have a release coming up, and right now about 1.5% of release journeys are failing. I have 0.5% of error budget left. Should I actually release now? Is the question that I have to ask myself, given the fact that, let's say, there are 4 months left in the SLO cycle. You can actually make your release strategy based on real-time information that is getting fed back into the testing and release cycle. When it comes to software design, this is where a lot of the unreliability or a lot of the tech debt actually originates. Yeah. Now, how can we actually impact that? Now, a lot of the design actually does not take any production scenarios into consideration. A lot of design is done based on functionality and not thinking of reliability. So what we give you the ability to do using our COMPAS and Watermelon technologies is the ability for you to simulate production-like problems in pre-production. Because especially in the banking and financial space which we are in, you cannot do any kind of simulations or breakages in production. It's just, you're not allowed to do that by regulation for the most part, and you can't do that because of revenue generating customer impact. So what we do is we come on board with a whole bunch of pre-built attacks. Now, when many customers go into the chaos engineering journey, because it's fairly well known these days, what you get from the industry and common OEMs are, certain baseline metrics which you should do chaos engineering on. This is from a popular OEM that sells chaos engineering as a service, right? So they tell you that these are the things that you should break in pre-production. However, what actually people need in an FSI context are very specific things, right? Things like, what happens if there is a time drift in production? Are your payment journeys going to be impacted? What happens in your multi-cloud environment that you're building in if a certain availability zone fails? What happens when security certificates are expired? Will you actually be able to view your account balance, for instance, right? Are there end-of-day duplicate jobs that are going to be running which will lock each other out and decrease the reliability of, let's say, insurance underwriting process, right? Are there going to be packet corruptions in production which will, let's say, make sure that a UPI journey doesn't go through? These kind of situations are peculiar to the banking and financial services industry, and those are what QualityKiosk comes pre-built with. Right? There's more than 130 pre-built situations that we package into our platform to help you get these design issues sorted before things reach production, right? The idea is to design with production feedback in mind, right? Prioritize the highest impacting work, simulate what will fail in production under load, right? And finally, we have, of course, the situation which is the trickiest, which is that of testing, right? How do I get out of depending on very specialized testing skills? How do I make sure that my testing coverage is extensive, right? Regression is obviously a problem, and many times it's a check in the box, right? How do I move into true regression testing using automation and reducing the toil of it? So the platform that QualityKiosk uses in order for these SRE services is basically something that is a complete automation of your NFR, right? Anything to do with non-functional requirements are completely automated by the platform using its inbuilt load generation capability and the ability to actually create test cases in a low-code fashion. What we also get on board for your non-functional, to make sure that these non-functional requirements are actual true end-to-end journeys, is the fact that we come pre-packaged with a lot of virtualized services. Now, especially in the banking industry, let's say you're talking about a payment journey, going back to the familiar example, you are unable to test an end-to-end payment journey because, let's say, you don't have access to the Aadhaar authentication API, or you don't have access to a KYC API for a insurance onboarding application, right? All of these services from third parties are packaged into the platform that we come to you with. There's more than about 43 or 44 such services which we come on board with, which enables you to actually do performance testing of end-to-end services before production. So what happens is you can integrate your entire NFR testing into your CI pipeline and automate that entire aspect and not have that as a user story even in your squads. This enables you to get out of the skill dependency that is usually associated with NFR testing, and you end up in a situation where you don't need one performance engineer per squad, for instance. When it comes to functional testing, that's where the 23 years of banking domain knowledge of QualityKiosk comes into play. So our engineers are not just skilled and understand the testing domain, but they also come on board understanding the applications which are used in the banking and financial services industry, right? There's a whole host of applications whose test cases we already have written down, and for the lending and insurance spaces, we have those codified into the platform as well. What that means is the moment you bring QualityKiosk on board as your SRE partner in the testing space, the test cases are automatically populated in the platform itself, making the time to value much shorter than it would be. And for test cases that are new, you can actually go ahead and create test cases in a zero-code Blockly-like platform, taking away the skill dependency. So you can actually have a designer or a business person actually go ahead and write out test cases automatically using a recorder, right? So this is essentially this traceability to business requirements, this automation of testing, the removal of any coding dependency that you have is what addresses the testing challenges in reliability. And finally, we have a situation where we are talking about the ability to improve your code in your SRE initiative in pre-production. What we do is we give the testing squads or the development squads a view into the hotspots where your code is malperforming. Now, very often you invest in a lot of observability solutions for the post-production, but people in pre-production, people who are developing the code actually have no idea how their code is actually performing under load. So what QualityKiosk platform does is generate that load for you, right? You can generate load in various ways, usually TPSs and so on, and you can make sure that a pre-production person has full knowledge of what their code would perform like in pre-production, identifying hotspots in the code and remedying that right there before the code actually moves into production. And what we also do is run a lot of that code on real devices, right? So for example, if you have a situation where your customers, we do an analysis of your customers, or maybe you have done an analysis of your customers and you know that these are the top 10 mobile devices which your customers actually use your mobile banking or your insurance quotation application on. We will add those devices into our lab and run end-to-end transactions of it in pre-production, giving you customer experience scores, because customer experience is one of the most overlooked things when it comes to the dev cycles. So before something goes into production, an engineer actually knows what the aptX scores of their critical transactions are. So we can help add those devices as well, depending on what your needs would be. So that is a brief overview of what QK does in its journey to accelerating SRE in banking, right? That's where you can work with us. And for more mature customers, we obviously talk about the Watermelon platform. Finally, to wrap things up, what we do in our SRE services is closely aligned with what the world of analysts talks about, how a enterprise can make its software digitally immune, right? Gartner, for example, comes out with 5 different pillars. It says that, hey, if you are embarking on a journey of reliability or digital immunity, you need to consider great observability, chaos engineering, testing automation, remediation of commonly occurring events, and continuous feedback into pre-production, which, if you notice, is exactly the 5 things that we spoke about in the last 15 minutes, right? When it comes to QualityKiosk, to wrap up what we are talking about, we have a situation where we are partners with the best of breed across the SDLC. We come on board with our own accelerators, and we have investments in companies which are accelerating the SRE journey of customers. At the end of it, incremental benefits is what will get you to a point where software gets more reliable as you adopt more and more of the SRE tenets. The end goal is, of course, to control technical debt, increase the number of correct transactions, and increase the number of transactions that happen under a period of time.